Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. It's the men's edition of Paris-Roubaix 2021. It's going to be a spectacular day because it's raining. Now, we all saw it coming, right? It was easy to predict after last week's weekend of racings for the World Championships. Once they started mentioning there was rain for this weekend, we knew to tune in for the Paris-Roubaix. I was up at 1:50 a.m. so I can catch it from kilometer zero. Today's race, 257 kilometers long, 30 cobblestone sections, and it's going to be a highlight, every one of them. Now, I'm going to only highlight some of today's story because there's just too much to talk about. So if you want to see some bike racing and you got 6 hours of dead time, I recommend tuning in because it's absolutely fantastic. The highlight of both weekends. Now, when we're talking about the World Championships, a week of racing, almost all those races were fantastic. The time trials were great. The men's and women's road race were fabulous. Yesterday's women's Paris-Roubaix absolutely lived up to its first year billing. Today's men's Paris-Roubaix will be the highlight of both weeks of racing. It's gonna be fantastic. Sit down, strap your seatbelt on, and hope you got a bunch of food next to you because there is no time to leave the couch. Now, when the racing starts, we're 1 kilometer into it, and it's already Mitch Docker, EF Education, the first to hit the deck, and he hits hard. Guys, when you're hitting 1 kilometer into Paris-Roubaix, you know today's going to be ugly. Shortly after that, a group of 3 will go up the road with Matteo Trentin. He'll drop out early, but the other 2 riders will stay off for 25 kilometers. Only 15 to 25 second gap on the peloton led behind because everybody wants to be in the break today. Once they're caught 25 kilometers later, it's a 30-plus rider group that's going up the road, and everybody's represented in it. Jumbo-Visma have 3 guys in it, and Wout van Aert is the 5-star favorite along with Mathieu van der Poel. Mathieu van der Poel's got teammates up there too with his Alpecin Phoenix. Ineos have multiple riders up there. Lotto Soudal have riders in the front group. Just about everybody's represented. Bora Hansgrohe had 1 rider in the front group, but they're not happy, so they're going to be chasing on the back. They'll have a little bit of help from the Stana team. When the group of 30-plus breakaway riders reach the slippery roundabout, Stefan Kuhn will lose the front end and slide out under the barriers. He'll get up and get back into the race, but he's going to get caught from the group behind. Now, they only had about a 30-second, 1-minute gap, so Stefan Kuhn couldn't make it back up to the breakaway. He tried hard. I don't know exactly understand why, because you're not catching a group of 30 if they're motivated. He'll get caught from the field, and then he'll crash again 30 kilometers later. Spectacular crash. That won't be his last crash. He'll crash again at 135 kilometers into the stage, and that'll end any chance that Stefan Kuhn had of winning today's Paris-Roubaix. Now, didn't go much better for Bora Hansgrohe. Peter Sagan took a spectacular crash. Bora Hansgrohe were trying to bring the break back or at least hold him close. And Bora Hansgrohe's Peter Sagan just slid out in the right turn. Spectacular crash with multiple riders and water just flying up in the air going everywhere. We won't see Peter Sagan again at the front for this year's Paris-Roubaix because none of his Bora Hansgrohe teammates waited for him. Now, I don't know if there was any left. By the time Peter Sagan had crashed, the racing had exploded, come back together, exploded again, and come back together. And then Peter Sagan goes out in spectacular style with no teammates around him to try to bring him back up to the front group. As we're nearing the famous Forest of Arenberg, this is when Jumbo-Visma start getting excited because Wout van Aert starts lighting it up back there. He won't be able to do enough to get off solo. And then as we reach the famous forest, that's when it gets really exciting. Now, the group up in front, they had 4 guys go away early into the stage, and we're talking about Vermeersch, Luke Rowe, Eickhoff, and Max Walscheid. Now, Luke Rowe flatted out of that break. Max Walscheid crashed in spectacular style, just like so many of today's crashes were. They were all day long, and just about every cobblestone section that you're tuning into is going to deliver a crash. Those 4 riders become 2 with Max Walscheid's crash, and then the 2 riders, Vermeersch and Eickhoff, the DSM rider, they're doing everything they can to keep a gap on the remaining breakaway riders. That group of 30 had shrank. Guys had crashed out. Guys had flatted out. It had become 5 and 10, and then it had grown back again. And the two riders out front, Vermaas and Eckhoff, are doing a fabulous job of entertaining us all sitting on the couch nice and warm watching today's Paris-Roubaix. As they come up to the Forest of Arenberg, that's when I said things are going to get exciting, and it does back in the peloton, because it's Mathieu van der Poel on the front, but behind Wout van Aert, starting the famous Forest just too far back. A rider crashes just in front of him, holds him up, and he won't go down, but he's going to have to put in a big effort to get up to Mathieu van der Poel, who's drilling it at the front. Now, guys from the original break of 30 are starting to get caught by the Mathieu van der Poel-led peloton back there. And while I believe it's Luke Rowe that gets himself back into the center of the cobblestones there, Mathieu van der Poel's group comes by and plows straight into Luke Rowe, and the rider goes right back down again. Mathieu van der Poel will leave the famous Forest of Arenberg with 4 riders attached on his wheel, but it'll come back together because Wout van Aert, who's back there getting dropped after getting held up in the crash, has done a spectacular job of riding hard on the pedals and bringing everything back together. With 85 kilometers to go, Sonny Colbrelli throws in a big attack, and he wants to get a little bit of time on Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert, the 5-star favorites at this year's Paris-Roubaix edition. He'll get a little bit of gap, and then it'll be bad luck happening for Jumbo-Visma, because at about 78 and 77 kilometers, Jumbo-Visma flat out of the break with Van Hooijdonk. Then 1 kilometer later, Rosen, who is the last Jumbo-Visma rider left in the break, he'll get stuck behind a crash with a right turn, and that'll bring him out of the break. With 75 kilometers to go, though, in the group of peloton favorites, it's Mathieu van der Poel, and he has to do a bike change back there, but he's got teammates with him that'll help him get back up to the front. He'll return to the front group with Wout van Aert, and then with 70 kilometers to go, Mathieu van der Poel will throw in a blistering attack that no one can follow. He'll bridge across quickly to Sonny Colbrelli and his companions, and now it's going to be a drag race between what's left of the peloton, with Mathieu van der Poel up front with Sonny Colbrelli helping him, and then it's Wout van Aert who will get some help after Van Hooijdonk's flat tire. He'll be back there to help him out, and then eventually Rosen will come back to help out Wout van Aert, but up front, Mathieu van der Poel is pulling hard. Sonny Colbrelli's coming through occasionally, and it's the Canadian national champ, Guillaume Boivin, that's pulling through and just having a fantastic Paris-Roubaix. Now, he's North American, so Guillaume, I'm familiar with his name and stuff, but seeing a ride like he's having here at Paris-Roubaix is just absolutely spectacular. He's able to follow the accelerations of Mathieu van der Poel and Sonny Colbrelli every time they throw an attack and a dig to try to get rid of the loose weight. They're now chasing 3 riders from the original breakaway: Gianni Moscon, Van Arsbrook, and Vermeersch. The Lotto Soudal rider is absolutely on flying form. They attacked their group with 60 kilometers to go, and now at 50 kilometers to go, Gianni Moscon Ineos is just flying up the road, attacking both his breakaway companions and trying to go solo to win this year's Paris-Roubaix edition. He's doing a fabulous job, guys, just flying across the cobblestones and looks fantastic. Behind it's Mathieu van der Poel and Sonny Colbrelli that's doing most of the work up there. But when they catch the Israel startup nation, Van Arsbrook, all of a sudden now the Canadian national champ, Guillaume Boivin, is starting to take pulls, and we're starting to see the time gap drop on Gianni Moscon up front. But Moscon looks solid on the pedals. He's definitely giving us a lot of hope of another solo winner at this year's Paris-Roubaix edition, just like we witnessed in yesterday's women's race. But Gianni Moscon, he's putting on a show until he flats. He'll get a bike change and have a fresh bike that he jumps on afterwards. Now, he lost about 10-15 seconds. His time gap went from just over a minute now down to about 50 seconds. But he still looks fantastic. And now I'm thinking while I'm sitting on the couch, guys, he's on a fresh brand new bike. It's going to be a nice lube chain. It's going to be clean tires. He'll be able to blaze across the cobblestones. That's what I thought. But just a few kilometers later, with 26 kilometers left in the race, Gianni Moscon will go down, and this will take a big hit on his time gap to the favorites behind, chasing him with Mathieu van der Poel and Sonny Colbrelli. Behind that group, you still have Wout van Aert back there, and they're trying hard to get back up to Sonny Colbrelli and Mathieu van der Poel, but the gap is just not coming down, and there's still about a minute deficit on all the favorites up front. The next rider that'll go down hard is going to be the Canadian national champ, Guillaume Boivin, that crashes. just takes himself out. The motorcycle almost runs into them, and then the motorcycle crashes to the left of the road along with Guillaume. Just after his crash, his teammate Israel Startup Nation's Van Arsbrook will get dropped from the Mathieu van der Poel Sonny Colbrelli-led train. Now they're coming up hot on the heels of Gianni Moscon, and they'll catch him with 16 kilometers to go, and then Sonny Colbrelli lights things up. Guys, I have to apologize to Sonny Colbrelli because before last week's World Championships, I had him rated as a 4-star favorites, and I told all you guys on Beyond the Coverage that 4-star favorites can't ride with 5. I clearly mismarked him because Sonny Colbrelli is going pull for Mathieu van der Poel, and when they caught Gianni Moscon, he's the first to throw an attack. Mathieu van der Poel will be quick to follow. Florian Vermeersch, the Lotto Soudal rider who got dropped originally from Gianni Moscon, is doing a fantastic job to hold on for dear life back there, and even starts taking pulls with Mathieu van der Poel and Sonny Colbrelli. Those three will ride pull for pull all the way until 3 kilometers to go. When Vermeersch throws in the first attack, the Lotto Soudal rider, he's young, but he's not scared to attack the legends of the sport. He'll attack, get brought back right away from Sonny Colbrelli, and then they'll enter the velodrome with Mathieu van der Poel on front, Sonny Colbrelli second wheel, and Vermeersch riding third wheel. With 200 meters to go, it's the Lotto Soudal kid who throws in the first attack. He goes over the top of both Sonny Colbrelli and Mathieu van der Poel to lead it out with 150 meters to go. Sonny Colbrelli, while in the saddle, coming around the right outside, getting the draft off of Vermeersch, does an amazing job of keeping power to the pedals all the way to the line. Behind, it's Mathieu van der Poel trying to come up even on Sonny Colbrelli, but he won't be able to get him. Sonny Colbrelli will win an amazing, wet, fantastic, epic edition of Paris-Roubaix. And guess what? It's the young kid, Lotto Soudal rider, Florian Vermeersch, that gets second. Mathieu van der Poel is third. Gianni Moscon held on in spectacular style to get fourth on today's Paris-Roubaix stage. It was an amazing race. I want to point out one other rider getting sixth too, because it was Christophe Laporte, the Cofidis rider back there. He ends up getting sixth on today's race. And at one point in time during the Paris-Roubaix, coming into the cobblestone sections, he had no brakes and was lifting up his right leg and putting his shoe into his back wheel like the old days when we were kids riding the BMX bikes with no brakes, right? We'd use our shoes back there to lock up the back wheel. Well, Christophe Laporte must remember those days and put them to good use, because not only did it help him stay in the front group, but he got a top 10 in today's race at Paris-Roubaix. It was absolutely a brilliant addition. Fantastic. Everybody go back and watch the whole 6 hours of racing, because I left out so much racing. There's no way I can bring it to you all. So you got to watch from kilometer 0 all the way to the finish, because every sector of cobblestones was fantastic. The Forest of Arenberg was absolutely the highlight, with how many crashes and how spectacular Wout van Aert was to close the gap, and how amazing Mathieu van der Poel's attack was leaving the forest. Up front, Sonny Colbrelli, man, I got to come wash your bike for you, brother, because after me marking you as a 4-star favorite, and then you taking pull for pull in today's Paris-Roubaix edition and winning today's Paris-Roubaix edition, you deserve 5-star rating for the rest of your career, brother. Hope you enjoyed your win. I know you'll look forward to it for the rest of your life. All the guys in today's race and yesterday's women's field, all congratulations, pat on the back from the Butterfly Effect channel here. I loved the racing yesterday. Today was spectacular and the highlight of both weekends of racing. Fabulous race. I'll see you guys soon on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.